when we're on set, I'm often behind monitor, you're behind monitor. For the most part, I let you direct, do your thing, unless I have something that's like really strong. Like, I don't think that's gonna sell because I'm looking at it as a saleable product.
We are back with more of the interview with Rachel, and she's got a lot of good nuggets to share on how to be good at producing. What's up, homegrown filmmaker? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Poling Swet, and I am a homegrown filmmaker and completely self-taught screenwriter and film director. Today is part 2 of the interview with Rachel about producing. And Rachel had a lot of good thoughts about mindsets that you need as a producer, skills you can cultivate to be a good producer, how to really serve people, and just how to create a production that people will want to come work on and will want to work with you repeatedly.
What do you feel like makes a good producer? What are the things you think about and focus that separate you from just doing an okay job to being a really good producer?
I think that what really sets you apart is caring for people as people, right? Because when you're making a project, it's really easy to focus on the project and forget that, you know, whether you're doing it for free or you're paying people, you know, people are spending their time with you. And, you know, especially when you're doing short films or even doing features, like we're constantly calling in favors, right?
Yeah, all the time.
Right, all the time. And so, you know, it's really important to just recognize that behind every favor and every prop and every extra is a person who gave their time to be there and to treat them really well. And that is free, right? Like that attitude is free. And you would be incredibly shocked to find out how many producers do not care at all about that. And that's really like, you can be not great at logistics and still do that part and have people walking away like, oh my gosh, it was so fun to work with them, right? So I think that a lot of what I care about is an offshoot of that, you know, like I care that somebody drove an hour to be here, and so I'm respectful of their time. So I'm going to do my best to make sure that, you know, we called them at the right time and they're leaving at an appropriate time. You know, like I want everyone's sleep hours to be respected as much as possible. You know, if we can wrap early, let's wrap early. You know, it's not always possible. It's actually really hard to do, but you know, like that's the goal, right? The goal is not just the finished product, but that the people involved felt respected and like a human, basically, because that's something that is really easy to overlook.
What do you feel like are the main things that you do to make sure that people feel that way, or the traps that you could fall in that you don't realize you're missing something?
I think just looking in people's eyes and saying thank you a lot goes a long way, and also feeding people. You know,
Nobody likes to work on an empty stomach.
You know, the happy crew is a fed crew. Feed your people really well. Don't just get pizza. Like, we like pizza every now and then, but like that's not gonna fly all the time. We typically put a large percentage of our budget towards food no matter what the project is, because that's, you know, that's one of the easiest ways to say like, hey, I appreciate you spending your time. I'm going to feed you well. You know, it's not gonna be just junk food, and you know, it's not gonna be like 2 granola bars and 1 juice box for 10 people, right? Like, don't do that. So I think that goes a long way. And also just like handwritten thank you cards at the end, you know, saying thank you, being really appreciative, telling people why you appreciate them specifically goes a long way. And just, you know, being on set with the attitude of a grateful, cheerful heart, you know, not being like the frowny doom and gloom person, like, oh, things aren't going well, like, oh, we're behind, you know, like just being a happy person to be around goes a long way. And I think that when it is your job to advocate for the schedule, for the budget, for the logistics of things, it's easy to fall into the trap of like, that's what I care about, and so that's what I'm here for, and just not make that investment into the people that are around you. And that's a huge mistake, because the people that are around you are the people who refer you. And so the more you're around people, the more people are going to be like, oh yeah, I worked with them and it was so cool, and like I highly recommend working with them, and oh yeah, I heard of them, they're really cool to work with, or oh yeah, I worked with them and that was a train wreck, like
bad reputations get around.
Bad reputations get around real fast. This is a who you know industry, and so your attitude is everything.
So I know you're saying like you can be not great at logistics, but part of respecting people is still doing your job the best that you can do on the logistical side. So really becoming knowledgeable about everything that goes into filmmaking. Not the artistic side, you don't have to know everything, but how to schedule people well, how to organize people, how to organize money, how to just be effective on that side of things as well. Do you have any strategies, tips, tricks on that side of things?
Yeah, I think that if you're somebody who is either a director who happens to be doing a lot of your own producing, or if you're a producer where like some of this really excites you, but like the nitty gritty of scheduling and details and where people are parking and budgeting and stuff like that is like really overwhelming, then you've already reached the point where you need to delegate. And I think that is kind of the most respectful thing you can do, to say like, oh, I'm not great at that. I need help from somebody who is great at, planning ahead far in advance. And I need somebody.
Okay. You guys work with Rachel. You're like, how soon can we plan this? How soon can we get it on the calendar? Like, what's? I'm like the last one. I'm like, could sometime in there is fine. No, let's make a plan. Let's plan to do it. Let's get there.
Yes, that is how our conversations go, especially with Max too. Like, you guys are much more like creative, and you're like, oh yeah, like I'm working on this and we'll get to it, and I'm like,
when?
Because like in my head I'm thinking through like, okay, like once the script is locked, then you gotta get the talent books, 2 to 3 months out, you gotta get your locations in line. If you're renting gear, you need at least 2 weeks to decide what you're renting and put the order. It's like my brain is backtracking from there, and so someone's saying like, oh well, just sometime soon is like, okay, so you mean it's not gonna happen for 3 months? That's what you're actually saying.
We're not going to be shooting for 3 months.
Right. Because I just know how long things take to actually put in action from having done it. And I think that's part of respecting people's time, is like, I respect people's time by, asking them far enough in advance that it's not a tight fit for their schedule. That's something that feels respectful to me. Of course, if we have to ask on short notice, oh well, you still have to ask, and you just have to be a lot more okay with no. And I think that that's kind of where the balance is like, if you're asking on short notice, you're gonna have to be okay with no and have like 2 or 3 backup options, because you didn't ask far enough in advance. When we're putting together a big project, like, it's my job to, as soon as possible, have enough data to lock in dates for people, because it's not respectful for us to say like, oh yeah, just like block out all of August, and then like once we get to August, be like, oh yeah, we need you for 2 days. Like, that's really disrespectful. So I think you can kind of see where like planning ahead is respectful, and same with like bathrooms and parking, and giving people directions, and just being clear about call time, and like all those things are like, well, we planned ahead, so we have all the details. We emailed it to you. We were as respectful of your time as we possibly could be. We thanked you for being there. We fed you well. You know, like that's the part that I handle. And then when they're in front of the camera, that's when Annie gets to make the art happen. But surrounding all of that was the logistics of getting those people there at the right time, prepared and fed and happy.
People. Handling people.
So some strategies for doing that are, well, I mean, it's just kind of working backwards. I think that that's a huge strategy that is oft overlooked. You know, like look at what you need, work backwards from that, and just figure out what you can do right now. Don't leave it up to like, well, we'll figure that out the week of. No. That's very bad words. I hate those words. We'll figure it out. later. Because when you're on set, you're burning people's time. Like that's literally what's happening. Every minute counts. And I am so painfully aware of that, especially when we have a budget. It's like, I see the sun inching. I see the seconds ticking. And so every time you have to figure something out, even if it seems like a small decision, it literally takes time away from the cameras rolling. And that's never what you want to have happen. So, you know, what can you figure out down to the minutia? Like work backwards until you have enough puzzle pieces to make your schedule, to have your crew locked in, to have your cast locked in, to have all of your art resources locked in, to have all of your tech resources locked in. If you can, like having the week before the production, I usually try to plan for everything that I know to do done before that week. So that week is literally all the last minute details that couldn't possibly have been figured out or done prior to that. But my goal is like everything should be done a week before, because it literally does take a whole week, especially for bigger productions, to wrap up the loose ends before you start production. That's like a scheduling misconception. You're not ready to shoot the day you start shooting.
It's the day after you start shooting?
You need to be ready like well before then, because once you start going, you can't stop, and there's no time to actually, you know, work through things. So that kind of ties back into the finished product. It's like, did you want to spend your time that was allocated to creating that product? Did you want to spend that time dealing with things that could have been done in advance? Or do you want to actually spend that time making the finished product the best it could be? So that's kind of where I come from. I don't know if I have any special tips or tricks necessarily, other than reframe your thinking about how long things take and when you're gonna do it.
The answer is longer than you think, and now.
Yeah.
You know, all joking aside, I do think that it's like there's the actual duties of the producer, the logistical side of just organizing everything and gathering data. Organizing it is what a lot of it is. But I think the other side of it is like this leadership portion, because the producer is in charge, like even above the director. Like this is the director's vision and their art and their story, but it's actually the producer who's the big boss. And it's a partnership at times, but you definitely have to have those leadership qualities. And that's what I thought about what you were saying with just treating people like people. And that leadership side of things is knowing how to work with people, knowing how to really make people feel appreciated. And it's also how to motivate people. And I think that's something that you've brought a lot. I don't know if every producer does this, but this is definitely what you have brought to our productions, is this helping everyone have the correct mindset about things and just motivating us to move forward.
Thank you. That's sweet of you. I think that a lot of people, they get bogged down in the bigness of it. Like it feels really overwhelming, and And a lot of what I always try to help people with is like, well, let's break this down into the smaller steps that we can take. You know, if I was like, okay, Annie, go produce a film, go, you know, it's like, oh, like that's an overwhelming thing. But if I was like, okay, so today, Annie, you're going to research and find 3 locations that you think would be a good fit for your script. And then tomorrow you're going to send them this email. And, you know, if they haven't responded to you in 2 days, follow up with them. And if they still haven't responded to you, go research more locations. You know, it's like we've broken it down into very actionable steps. And that's really, I think that's one of the biggest motivators is like getting people out of overwhelm and just saying, okay, like where are we stuck? And how can we take the small action that gets us to the next step?
That makes a lot of sense. That's one of the big mindsets. I think one of the other ones is the just ask mindset.
Oh, for sure. There's a lot of fear surrounding asking for what you need. And that's very natural, right? I think that everybody experiences that in some way. I know that the bigger the production we have, the more I have to like swallow and just be like, just ask, Rachel, just ask, you know. They might say yes, who knows. and just realize that, you know, ask yourself, like, if you're asking for something and somebody says no, are you going to be okay? Inside, in your soul, will you be okay? And if the answer is no, I will not be okay, well, then clearly there's some work to be done there, right? Like there's some truth telling that needs to happen. You should always be okay with somebody saying no. And for the most part, like there's some rude people in the world and you can have pity on them because their life is clearly not going well. You know, but you know, most people you can assume are kind and generous. And if you go in assuming that they're kind and generous, it'll be a lot more easy for them to be kind and generous, because they'll feel like you can receive that from them. So just walking into situations going like, you're a human and I appreciate you. And this is what I have to ask. And if you say no, that's totally okay. If you don't ask, the answer is no. So just ask.
Just ask. So break down, overcome, overwhelm, just ask. What about other big mindsets that make moving forward easier?
Well, I know that like there's a lot of kind of entanglements with the just ask thing. Like I know that, you know, one thing that's come up with, you know, folks I know, you know, when I say, well, like, we'll just ask, you know, something that comes up is like, well, I don't want to ask for a favor because I feel like that makes me look bad, or like, I don't know what they're thinking about me, or just assuming that, you know, people are going to have judgments about you. And that's something to really get a hold of and address, because you're basically making assumptions about what another person thinks. And really, most people aren't doing that. They're not really even thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. You know, by thinking that thought, you are proving that people think about themselves, because you're thinking about yourself in that moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So most people are just thinking about what you think about them. And so to overcome that, you just need to recognize that you are the one who has to break the barrier, kind of, right? You get interested in them, you smile and look in their eyes, you initiate the relationship, and you pursue an actual relationship with them. And it will break you out of that, oh my gosh, what do they think of me? You know, like, like I can't ask for a favor because they might think I'm, you know, XYZ, you know, like they most likely aren't thinking that. And even if they are, would you be okay? If the answer is no, there's some work to do there. So, So I don't know that I have more to add other than breaking it down into small pieces and just asking. Like, a lot of that has to do with your mindset and you being okay to do things that are a little scary, and also just realizing that people aren't thinking about you, they're thinking about themselves, and that's fine. You know, that means there's not as much judgment as you think there is. You can just say, I choose to believe that this person isn't judging me, and therefore this relationship is open and available to me.
I think it's good to hear these things because mindsets are hard to convey, and this is just like hearing you talk and how you think about it just helps kind of convey the way you think about film entirely. The truth is, you're not going to make films without that. You're just not going to make them if you let that stuff hold you back. And if you don't ask, and if you don't break it down, you just sit in your overwhelm. And so if you want to get out there and you want to make the films, you kind of just got to decide to do it, you know? I think that's another mindset that you've taught me, at least. So it's just decide to do it. And it's okay if you fail. And it's okay if it's not as... if you feel uncomfortable doing it, you know? Just do it.
Yeah, if you feel uncomfortable doing it, that means you're probably doing the right thing. Like, if it's all comfortable, then you're not growing, and that's not a good sign, right? Like, yeah, I think a lot of what I'm always looking for is like, how can we stretch ourselves appropriately? Obviously, like, we have done things that was too much to bite. You know, that was too big of a bite for us. You know, like, we really struggled to get through that one. Well, we learned, you know, it's okay. We failed there. But, you know, I don't really ever want to do something that isn't pushing us a little bit in some area. And, you know, for a lot of our recent past, pushing ourselves in the producing department has been like what we're doing, right? Like we're adding extras, or we're adding logistical nightmare locations, or we're, you know, like we're
out
adding
of town talent.
Right. We're adding, you know, 100 people on one day, you know, like we're adding things to push the quality of the film that require a larger level of logistics than we've ever done before. And we're just like, we might mess this up. This might go down in flames. But we're going to do our best. And, you know, we're going to respect everyone's time, and we're going to plan as far ahead in advance as we can. And we're going to feed all of these people. And, you know, if I don't feel like I can handle it, I'm going to make sure there's at least one person for this one day with the 100 extras who is like, their whole job is handling the extras. And like, because I didn't feel like I could do that. We did that. It's really about taking those things and just applying them to like everywhere.
Everywhere. All of it.
Everywhere.
Spread it around.
So one of the books that I read that really launched me in a lot of ways, not just in filmmaking, but also in other jobs that I've had, was The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. And like, there's a lot of things in that book that I'm like, you know, like maybe tone it down a little bit, Grant. But kind of the really big takeaway for me was like, just decide to do it, but decide you're doing it all the way. So for instance, like location scouting is one of those things where it's like, I don't particularly love it, but it has to be done, and it has to be done early. And, you know, that's the one where you're really needing to make a lot of relationships and ask for big favors. So the 10X rule is that whatever you need to do, you need to 10 times it. So if you need one location, send out 10 emails. If you need, you know, 100 extras, right, you need to send out 1,000
emails.
Right. So it's not always true that that's what it takes, but if you're shooting for 10 and you hit 5, great. You know, like you have way more to work with than if you just sent one. So sending one little email to say, hey, can I use your location for my film review? Thank you for your consideration. You know, like if you do that, and then they don't get back to you, or they say no, like how much more are you just gonna feel like a bug splattered all over a windshield, you know, confidence-wise, than if you were to say, I just need one location. I'm going to send out 10 emails. Surely one of these people will most likely say yes, right? It's a completely different level of confidence to say, if I have to do this once, might as well do it 10 times. And, when you do that as a producer, it means you have a lot more resources to work with, right? You have choices. And that's something that I think directors really appreciate.
Yes. Which one of these do you like?
Right. I say, okay, Annie, we have 3 locations available for this. Which would you prefer? Right? That's such a better position to be in than, the one and only location I reached out to said no. I guess we can't do the project, right?
You went further than I did. I was like, I guess we could make this one work.
Oh yeah, well that's another one. There is times when you do have to settle for what is available. Like that's always gonna happen. Like our main location for Match Made at Christmas, it was the only one. Like that's the house we're gonna use. That is it. Thank you. But prior to receiving that blessing, I had already been 10xing it. Like I was talking with a realtor, I was talking with people I knew around town. I was already looking and searching and speaking out what we needed. And I think that's another big part of it, is not keeping to yourself what you need, because you never know who's going to bless you. And I think that's a huge part of our story, is how much blessing we've received from people who genuinely enjoyed just talking with us. And we're like, how can I help you? Like, I think that's one of the most common things we hear is, how can I help you guys? That's such a sweet blessing.
Yeah, which is amazing.
But it's because we operate in this favor mode where, we create genuine relationships and you can tell that we care about people. We're okay with them saying no. And we're respectful, so people are more likely to bestow favor on us and to, open doors because we asked, A, and B, because we're kind humans, and C, because we go over and above to make sure that they're comfortable with all of that.
And that's where I'm going to end it for part 2. Part 3 is going to be the last part. And if you would like to be notified when that comes out, make sure you hit subscribe below so you don't miss it. Rachel and I own a production company named Abundant House Films, and you can go check out our YouTube channel or our website to go see our catalog of work there. Also, if you would like to join the Homegrown Filmmaker community, you can do that on Facebook. We have a private Facebook group where we can share our projects, receive critiques, encouragement, and just chat about movies, because that's what we all like to do. If you'd like to find me on the socials, I'm the Homegrown Filmmaker, and I will say that Instagram tends to be the place where I'm more active, and I post a little bit more content there than I do on YouTube. So if you'd like to see that, make sure you go follow me on Instagram. That's all for now, so thank you so much for watching. Stay creative, stay productive, and I will see you next time.